Live from Jacksonville, Florida, the Four Verticals podcast is about to start now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Four Verticals podcast episode 98. Two more shows away from episode 100. I don't know how to feel about it. Feel great about it. Feel nervous about it. We're on 100 episodes. We're about to be 100 episodes in. So this time next week, we have an hour 100 episode special. I don't know what we're going to do necessarily for it, but I have a couple of ideas. We'll get started here in just a minute. A little bit of a pre-show here, but a little bit shorter than it usually is. But yeah, how about that? I'm going to make sure the tweet's been set out. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. Of course, we are live high atop a somewhat, steamy Jacksonville, Florida. The cold front came in yesterday, and around this time of the year, it's not so much a cold front in terms of, the meteorology side of things. It's more of a surface boundary, so it didn't really cool us off that much. Still going to be warm, so it doesn't really matter. Or at least doesn't really matter in terms of the temperature. Just we got some rain yesterday. Guess while we're in the pre-show, of course we didn't have our show Tuesday. We had it Monday because of issues. Of course, thinking about a lot of the folks up in the north portions of Alabama, southern Tennessee. A horrible tornado outbreak there on Tuesday. Was watching some of the coverage. Of course, as someone who used to live up there, has somewhat of a vested interest up there still. Well, it's tough to watch for sure. A lot of areas I got hit I've seen before, I've been to before. Now it's been a long time since I've lived there. But yeah, so a lot of you guys, keeping a lot of you guys in my thoughts if you're up there. If you're watching this, yeah, I was watching the coverage on Tuesday, and it was pretty bad. A lot of good footage of tornadoes, but certainly they don't like it happening in high-profile areas. So was watching that on Tuesday a little bit. But yeah, so we're back to our usual schedule, at least for the next couple weeks, then the first week of June, and we may not be able to have live shows. So it's just another, I guess, programming alert there. So we may have to pre-record some stuff, may do that next week. So, or maybe even tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think that's the plan for first week of June. Or that we could just take a vacation, but probably not. I would at least want to have material out there for you guys to enjoy, so we're not doing nothing. But all right. So looks like it's after 2:10 on the East Coast. It's now 2:11. So we are going to officially get started for the Spotify viewers. So in about a minute or so, make sure the microphone's working. Of course, for those of you who don't know, the Spotify version of episode 97 is not available. I was going to save it and have it downloaded from StreamYard, but unfortunately I deleted the audio because I forgot something happened with the microphone, and make sure it's working here. But yeah, so there's no audio version on Spotify for episode 97. So if you're wondering where it is, apologies. You'll have to go to YouTube for that. Bring the thing closer over here before we get started here on the actual show. But okay, looks like a little bit of breaking news. We're talking about it anyway, but it's confirmed now, so not that big of a deal. So we're about to start here the actual show in 3, 2, 1. And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, Four Verticals podcast episode 98, live high atop a somewhat steamy Jacksonville, Florida, here on this May 22nd, 2025, Thursday before Memorial Day. A long weekend ahead for a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys in the U.S. Long holiday weekend. Got a little loaded show for you guys today. We actually had our breaking news a little bit. Well, not breaking in terms of shocking. It's kind of what we thought was going to happen. So we'll touch on that actually on the first topic here. But I got a loaded show. Of course, if you're watching this now as we're live, it is not official. There is going to be a new college football playoff seeding for this year. So the old way or last year's way of doing things is not happening this year. That's been confirmed. Ross Dellinger is first on that. Heather Dinich reported it. Now it's official, I believe, from the College World Playoff social media accounts. It is going to be a brand new seating, so this is going to be a totally new model. I'll go over it all. Frankly, I kind of feel like a lot of folks kind of agree with me that this should have been the seating, the way the seating was done beforehand, but we'll get into that in a second. Big 12 coaches under pressure. Got 3 names I want to discuss. USC Notre Dame. We haven't had a chance to talk about it. Of course, they have a show Tuesday. We had a show Mondays. This came out before. This was percolating on Tuesday. Team record projections continue. Texas A&M is up next. And then we'll get into some Q&A. It's another short Q&A, but that's fine. It's understandable. Again, if you are new here, before we get started with the first topic, be sure to follow us on Twitter at just search for Verticals Podcast on Twitter, X. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like the streams, like the videos. If we don't have live shows, we may not have them, especially around this time of the year. It gets a little funky. We will have pre-recorded shows more than likely, so just make sure to like those as well, and like the streams, subscribe, follow us on Spotify. I know episode 97 of the show is available on YouTube still, as it usually is. The audio version on Spotify is not, so apologies for that. Some things happened during the stream, so we couldn't actually, have the audio version there perfectly. But hopefully on today's stream, the microphone won't disconnect again like it did last time. So all those things out of the way, let's actually get into here. So Ross Dellinger earlier today reported that the college football playoff executives, a lot of the higher-ups, the higher mustaches, the TV execs, like that, we're meeting today to approve a brand new seating model. Now, this has been percolating under the surface for a while. And, of course, we've talked about it. Cover 3 has talked about it. Josh Pate's talked about it. About this new seating structure for college football, right? Because last year's playoff, and again, I'll just rehash the story, I may as well. A lot of folks, including me, thought they were seating the teams 1 through 12 just like the rankings, right? The rankings you see every single week, starting in like late October, early November. That's not the case, and I think for a lot of us who played the EA Sports College Bowl 25 video game, we learned that that's not necessarily the case. It's your rating. The seating is a little bit different because the 4 highest ranked teams that are conference champs will get first round buys, so the seating is not necessarily reflective of the rankings. It's a little confusing, but with the video game coming out back last summer, it made things a little bit easier for us who play the game to understand what the rankings will be and the seating, how that'll work come like November, December. So then you have, of course, the auto bid stuff, which was stupid to begin with. Now, Ross Dellinger reported this a couple minutes ago. Now it's been official from like Heather Dinich and some of the other reporters, and also it looks like the College World Playoff social media pages that the CFP executives met today on the phone, and they unanimously adopted a move to straight seating for this year's playoff. And of course, as you know, 2026 and beyond will have a new format more than likely. It seems like we're going down that road. There'll be a larger format, and this will change. So Ross is reporting on Twitter that teams will be seated directly based on the rankings. So they will be reflective of the rankings. So it will not be like last year. It will not be like it was last year with the confusion. It'll just be, if you're ranked 1 through 12 in the final College World Playoff rankings, that's where you'll be seated. So now there's a lot of questions about this. Of course, a lot of folks aren't necessarily sure how this is going to work. It hasn't been totally ironed out. I know I'm looking on Twitter right now. The Sickos Committee on Twitter, by the way, you should follow them. They're really funny. General question I think a lot of you are asking, will the G5 still be guaranteed a spot? Yes, they will. Now, they won't necessarily be given a first-round bye anymore. I think they'll still be the top 4 seeds, but they're not going to be conference champs. So you can be a team left out of your conference championship game. You can still get a first-round bye. So, for example, your Arizona States of the world, your SMUs, your teams like that, Boise States, Tulane's. Unfortunately, you getting a first-round bye is not going to happen this year. That's unfortunate. That's just how it's going to go. Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work. So expect Big Ten, SEC to get at least 2 of those first-round byes. If you don't like it, it is what it is. But if you understand it, I mean, that's just the way the sport's going, unfortunately. Those 2 conferences bigger conferences, SEC, Big 10. At this point, they are guaranteed to basically get those 2 spots now. That's how it's going to work. I myself, not overly a fan of it in terms of the 2, conferences hijacking the sport, but there's nothing I can do about it. But overall, though, if you're looking at this from just idea standpoint versus we had last year, I much prefer this. Personally, I prefer doing if this model were to continue, which again, it's not. I know it's not official, but trust me, it's going to change again. I don't know what to tell you, but it's definitely going to move to like a 14, 16 team playoff. It's obvious now. It's not going to go any higher, or it's not going to go any lower now. We can't. It's like the analogy I used before when you're renovating a building. If you don't tear down the whole building, you just change the things in it and maybe add more to it. You don't decrease the building. You add on more into it. And that's what the playoff committee is doing here. They're adding on more things to it instead of taking away things. Why would you do that, right? Because of the money. But again, in terms of a model with the current, or at least the seating format with the current model we have, I don't have a problem with this. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing. I think it makes more sense. It's less confusing. I'm going to use this analogy before because we don't talk about college basketball in here. But one of the things I like about college basketball is that the selection committee and when they do things over there for the tournament, they just seed teams based on it's less confusing because they don't have a ranking system. And I think that format sort of works as it's less confusing, right? Because unfortunately, the playoff committee, the way they seed the teams has to be tied to the rankings. But if you want to make it easier, the rankings you see every single week would be the seedings for the final when the playoffs start, when you're filling out your bracket. It's going to be the same. So at least it will eliminate some of the confusion on that. And of course, the auto bid system is also going to change a little bit because it is going to get rid of the top 4 seeds getting top 4 seeds being relegated to conference champs. So, for example, if you had a 9-4 or a 8-4 team that for some reason made it to your conference championship, if they win it and they're a highly ranked team, they will be in the playoff. That's not going to happen anymore. So, kudos to the playoff committee for at least making this change and making it easier to follow. Now, this also means, speaking of the video game, that this will also impact the video games. That means EA Sports will have to basically make a whole new algorithm for it, which I'm not saying it's going to delay the game, but might be a reason why we're getting a delay on information. As you notice, we're now Thursday now, and I said Tuesday we'll get information by now, but it's not the case. We'll see. But yeah, I'm okay with this, even though it's not. And here's sort of I'll end up with this, and we'll move on. Well, again, I'm happy that these changes are being made. I'm happy that we are making it a little bit easier for people to follow. I still don't understand why they changed it, because you're changing the format anyway next year. So what's the incentive of doing it now, even though your school is out come December, because you're changing the format and we're expanding it again. So whatever, it's fine. It's only for 1 year, and then next year we'll see how it works next year. So yeah, playoff expansion. And this was something that was again, we heard the reports that there was going to be a decision probably being made at some point today, and then here we go. It's the new seedings here. So yeah. Now, I guess we'll see if anything else I missed here. This is from Brandon Marcello and his, I think it's in the article now on CBS Sports, but his tweet here, I guess we'll end up with this. Again, CFP leaders have unanimously approved the straight seeding for this upcoming season, per sources to CBS Sports. So the 5 highest ranked conference champs are assumed a spot, but the 4 highest ranked champs are not assumed a bye. So again, that's confirmation that the old model of the top 4 seeds are your top 4 conference champs, that's not the case anymore. So that is interesting. But the 5 highest ranked conference champs will be assumed a spot. So they will still get a spot, but they just only get a first round bye. It will be the highest ranked teams, not necessarily if you won your conference championship or not. So you could be the loser of your conference championship, so you could still be a top 4 team. So I think last year, I believe, Georgia gets the first round bye. Texas can still get one as well. So it eliminates confusion with the rankings versus the seeding. That doesn't reflect it. Again, do I think it's kind of dumb that they're changing it and they're changing it next year? Yes, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's the new seeding there. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Discuss, if you will, in the comment section, I guess, or in, well, doing the live chat, but whatever. To get some water here, and then we'll move on to our what was going to be our first segment, but of course, this news came out. Yeah, the news came out before where we were. Well, it was confirmed right where we started. So, coaches under pressure, not necessarily job security, but just coaches under pressure. A new segment we've started. Of course, we did a version of this last year, but it was first year coaches. We're just doing that for regardless. We did the SEC and the ACC. We did the SEC this time last week. We did the ACC on Monday. Now we're doing the Big 12. A couple of coaches on here want to discuss. Now, of course, not everyone's making this list. Like, for example, Kenny Dillingham, Kyle Whittingham, for reasons because he is eventually going to leave due to retirement. He's not going to get fired, so that's different. Like Chris Klein's not on here. Matt Campbell's not on here. Lance Leopold's not on here. Coaches like that. Willie Fritz not on here necessarily because he just got there at Houston. I guess it could have added in Cincinnati, but that's a little bit different with Satterfield. But we'll just go through the names here. I have 3 on here, so make it simple. Mike Gundy, a lot of pressure here. Last year, Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy, it's awful last year. They were really bad. I have to check here. I know they went, was it 3-9-2-10? I don't necessarily remember. But it was a really bad year for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, for a long time, was the model of consistency in college football, especially in the Big 12. Right? When in a conference where you had Oklahoma and Texas, it was Oklahoma for a little bit, and then it was Oklahoma State, the two teams that were consistently doing well. They were horrible last year. There was no way of sugarcoating it. It was bad. Coming off of a 10-win season, you had Ollie Gordon. I believe he's there still. I don't know for sure, but yeah, they were 3-9 last year, 0 wins. New changes at coordinators. It seems like it's a very much a lame duck situation. I'm going to see here. If Ollie Gordon is still here, I believe he is still there, though I could be wrong. Let me check. No, he's not. He's in the NFL. I figured. Yeah, he's not there anymore. But so you lose him last year. It was bad. Yeah, if you knew coordinators, Todd Grantham is there. So Florida Grantham is at Oklahoma State now. He's in Stillwater. Doug Meacham, someone familiar with the conference. Mike Gundy's been there for 21 years. Been there just as long as I've been alive. Again, he's a model of consistencies. Up until last year, very consistent. I don't know what this looks like for them. You look at your schedule here. Of course, we may or may not do a full breakdown of it, record projection and whatnot. But you got your FCS team. You go to Oregon. Tulsa for the rivalry game. I believe it's a Friday game. Friday game it looks like. And you get Baylor at Arizona, Houston, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Kansas on the road, Kansas State at UCF, and then Iowa State. So it's kind of a tough schedule, I would say. But it is the Big 12. Strange things can happen. We've seen teams, TCU going to the national championship, and then they go 5-7 the year after. So we have seen weirder things happen. And as Josh Pate says, it is America's football conference. So weird things can happen. Certainly they can turn things around. Of course, new coaching staff, and we'll see what they can do at quarterback, because it was awful last year, and running back. I don't know. Again, I don't think Mike Gundy's going to get fired necessarily. He's given himself enough equity, I guess, to be safe in terms of firing. If he does end up leaving, it'll be probably him being retired or just resigning or something like that. But we'll see here. Again, it's disappointing. I've always thought Oklahoma State, again, sort of the model of consistency in the Big 12, besides your two bigger brands, or I guess at the time it was Oklahoma before Sark got there at Texas. But, disappointing. He's certainly under a lot of pressure this year, but I don't know if it's the same type of pressure. I think a lot of it, too, a lot of folks have sort of came to this conclusion for Oklahoma State is that the sport has passed them by, right? With NIL, transfer portal, the two bigger conferences have sort of separated themselves. And, now you have OU and Texas now in the SEC, and that sort of recruiting pipeline has now dove into the Big 12 territory because, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma are not in the same conference anymore, and they can't play each other anymore, which sucks. And the rivalry with Bedlam, but I don't know, just a lot of different factors for this. It's disappointing, but I think when you look at it a little bit deeper, you can sort of see a reason as to why it's happening. Not necessarily enjoying it. If you live in, I don't know, Eden, Oklahoma, or Surreal or Cement, Oklahoma, if you're living there and you're an Oklahoma State fan, yeah, it sucks. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other circumstances that have caused this to happen. But look, I'm hoping they're successful this year. It'll be a very Big 12-ish for them to go 3-9, then all of a sudden they win the league. But I'm not totally expecting that, but we'll see. Speaking of disappointing, Arizona State, Brent Brennan. This is weird. So how should I put this? Last year was weird because you had Jet Fish go to Washington after Kellen DeBoer left to go to Alabama. It was a very strange situation. Limitations at quarterback. You had the McMillan kid who was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, good receiver. Was just bad last year. I was off on them. I thought they'll be a lot better. I trusted Brent Brennan. He's a guy has connections to Arizona. He was at San Jose State before that. Had a great tenure there. Just wasn't good enough. 4-8, 2-7, just awful. Be interesting to see how they rebound this year. Because again, they do get the quarterback back this year. It's with limitations there, unfortunately, because of some of his skills and abilities with Fafita. But their schedule, if you look at it this year, unlike what it was last year, so they get Hawaii, FCS team. You have a game against a conference opponent, but much like last year, it's a non-conference because you've added in too many conference games because of the realignment. So, and they scheduled the game beforehand, too. This is supposed to be a non-conference game, but they just kept it that way, even though it's technically a conference game. And it's also a standalone game on a Friday, much like last year. And it'll be in Tucson. Then you have at Iowa State, Oklahoma State, BYU. It's you have Houston and Colorado. It's the same schedule as last year, just the venues change. It's still quite tough. I do worry about Brent Brennan. Again, last year, just how much hype there was with the team with Fafita. And of course, a lot of folks were hoping he would take a next step, and he took like 20 steps backwards. You wasted McMillan at receiver. And of course, you had the hot seat rumors last year. I don't know. Like, what is the energy of Arizona right now in Arizona football? Because Arizona football, felt like things were getting, improving, scaling up with Jeff Fish being here after the Kevin Stillman years were just. I just don't know how Arizona thought it was appropriate to hire him after A&M. I just don't understand that because they're coming off the Rich Rod years, which sort of fell off a little bit. What is Arizona football? Like, what is the identity of Arizona football? Is it offense? Is it defense? I really don't know. It's a bit of a mystery right now. Again, they are in, America's Football Conference, as Josh Pate calls it. There's a lot of opportunities there, again, for returning quarterback, which is not always a good thing. You have a new staff there, a new coordinator because they fired the guy last year. Defense coordinator is still the same. It's going to be tough, though, because I think in the Big 12, and I think it's obvious with the way it's structured, if you have your top teams like your Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State, so on and so forth, then you have Big Golf of these, a lot of these teams basically may as well have the same uniforms or different uniforms, different names, but they have the same type of rosters, right? You have, good quarterbacks, average defenses, and average talent around you. But, I mean, again, besides like Arizona State, again, Iowa State, Kansas State, that and Texas Tech, that's kind of it. There's a bit of a golf. Now, it's not a big golf. It's small, but, that's not the biggest, gap in between the talented or the really good teams versus the mixing melting pot of every teams. And then the other coach on here that I want to discuss is Joe McGuire. And I think necessarily this is job security of McGuire. It's just a lot of pressure, right? You bring in the booster Campbell. He was bringing in a lot of money. You had a really good transfer portal. You've been recruiting very, very well. Top 25 classes. You finished really well in terms of your record. Bowl appearances, 8-win seasons. This is a year from there's a lot of pressure, competitive pressure. Get it done. And I think for a lot of folks who don't follow this that much, there is pressure there to win. Josh Pate talked about it too. There's a lot of pressure for Joey McGuire and that staff there to get it done this year, to at least to capitalize on the things they have done, right? And the money coming in, transfer portal additions, sort of building the roster via recruiting. And there's a lot of pressure there to see return on investment. Sort of like, staying in the same Texas, what A&M fans have been wanting under Jimbo and now the current regime of having those top 10, top 5 recruiting classes and having the top recruiting class and sort of getting a return on investment on their recruiting. I haven't had it yet, and unfortunately they won't. Texas Tech and those folks over there in Lubbock, they want it. They want return on investment. I think there's a lot of pressure on Joe McGuire to get that done. And he's not stupid. I think he knows that this is a year to take advantage of because, again, there is a bit of a power vacuum after OU and Texas left after 2023. So, yeah, coaches under pressure in the Big 12. Again, Mike Gundy, Brett Brennan, Joe McGuire. Could have put Satterfield on here, but that's a little bit different. Cincinnati, it's a little bit – there's standards there, but there's, like, reasonable standards, right? You're a former G5 team. You're going to a much bigger conference now with a much different talent pool, even though the Big 12 is a glorified G5 conference. That's tough, but to at least get yourself acclimated and get the talent there around you. But left him off. You could have easily been on here. Scott Satterfield, but I didn't. But, coaches under pressure in the Big 12. There's 3 names. Could have had a little bit more on there, but I think everybody else except for these is mostly safe. Like Kyle Cunningham, he could resign or retire. He's already named his successor, so eventual coaching change will come there. But, coaches under pressure in the Big 12. We'll do the Big 10 on Tuesday. And then we'll I guess I'll be done, actually, I guess, after that. Tomorrow, Water here, we'll talk about USC and Notre Dame, that whole fiasco, and then we'll get into team record projection for A&M, then we'll finish up the Q&A. Again, if you've made it this far into the show, again, thank you for tuning in. Again, a couple things here to remind you as we're sort of at the midpoint in the show. Subscribe. Hit the like button. Like the streams, videos. We don't ask for much. We don't force you guys to sign anything. We don't knock on your door of wherever you live and force you to sign anything. I don't send you stuff in the mail. I don't text you guys, email you guys stuff. I don't want you guys to give me money or anything or go to a Patreon page. Everything on here is gonna be free. All the information that we have, all the opinions I have, they're all free for you on here. I don't have to make you guys pay for extra stuff. I know a lot of folks do that. Understand that. You don't have to make money, but I myself, I'm not asking you guys to do that. All this stuff's going to be free. It's going to be free for forever. I'll never put you guys behind a paywall or anything like that. So, again, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter, Spotify, all those places you can find me. It's not hard. I think most of those should be linked on the YouTube channel. They're not linked in the description necessarily, but they are linked on the YouTube channel info. So if you want to follow over there and go to Spotify as well, go ahead. USC Notre Dame rivalry ending. This is something that's been sort of been bothering me the past couple of days. And what's been happening here? It's been reported by a lot of folks, reputable reporters, that USC and Notre Dame, there's been their current deal of this rivalry, which has been around for may as well be 1,000 years, expires after this year. So after this year, there are no scheduled games. The idea is that Notre Dame wants to continue to schedule this game. They want to because they're independents. They can kind of schedule whomever wants to schedule them. USC, however, is getting cold feet. Some of the reasons why I think they feel that way is because of cultural playoff and expansion and conference realignment. So the reason why they feel this way is because, well, number one, again, playoff expansion, the whole, how do you actually accurately determine strength of schedule, because there's a lot of different thoughts out there. There's the one camp, of course, of, you are what record says you are, which is not true in college football. It is true in the NFL. I say that and people still laugh at me at that, but that's what it is. I don't know what to say. If you're not which record says you are, a 12 and a 13-0 G5 team. Let's say just who's random G5 team. Let's say James Madison. Nothing wrong. I'm not trying to go after Bob Tisney or anything over there, and I believe that's in Virginia. But I'm not trying to diss those folks over there at JMU. But a 13-0 JMU team versus a 9-3 USC team. USC would be in the playoff, in my opinion. I would not put them over a 13-0 JMU, but the UR record says UR crowd will say, oh yeah, 13-0 JMU should be in the playoff, right, top 4 seed. I totally disagree with that. I think that's stupid. Now look, I'm okay with G5s being in the playoff. That's okay. Even though I don't necessarily believe they play the same sport, but whatever, under current model, fine, whatever, they can be in. I don't believe that G5 should be getting a spot over a 9-3 USC team. I totally disagree with that, and being ranked above them would be ridiculous too. So there's that reasoning too, and it's sort of that confusion over, how does the committee properly, evaluate strength of schedule? Should you be scheduling out harder non-conference games on top of your conference schedule, being Big 10 or the SEC, or should you be doing what USC is thinking, which is, well, because of this, we're not exactly sure how the playoff committee and how those folks evaluate strength of schedule. And, why don't we just get rid of this game and just schedule, I don't know, Fresno or UC Davis or some other like G5 team on the West Coast? That's their thinking. And that's why there is this rumbling of they might be interested in, carrying on this rivalry. The second part of it is, of course, conference realignment. It also ties into it with your schedule and how hard it is now. And I think with USC, at least their thinking is, well, look, we're in the Big Ten now. We're playing, in some years, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, at least in some order. There's no reason for us to add in another game and make it even harder. Again, sort of ties into that strength of schedule scenario and the playoff expansion, things like that. But for me, just if you're looking at it from the information stuff, and it's old news now because it's been a couple of days since this broke. So most of you know the reasoning behind what I think of this. I think this is stupid. Again, I think the whole, strength of schedule thing and the reasoning behind that reasoning behind this decision to not continue it, at least that's being reported, I think that's garbage. This is a traditional rivalry. And for me and someone who's been watching college football for the majority of my life, someone who's followed the sport, who understands the USC rivalry or a USC Notre Dame rivalry, traditional rivalry, a lot of classic games, right? The Reggie Bush game, and they go to South Bend, and it's a, thriller towards the very end, of nail biter. This is a traditional rivalry that should be protected. It should be a tradition. Like the only times, and Josh Payton mentioned this yesterday, and I didn't really think about this. I didn't really notice until he brought it up. The only times they have stopped playing this rivalry was in WW2, like literal global conflict that involved superpowers going against each other. If you didn't know, you know now, I guess, if you're young. Better read up on your world history. Or the 2020 season where it was just strange all around. Besides those two seasons where historical events, world events happen, this rivalry's been played every single year, pretty much in a normal year, I guess, or normal circumstances. It's been played. It's tradition, and this is one of the things I hate about conference realignment and conference expansion is things like this, like rivalries being taken away, like the Oklahoma State rivalry. This game, this rivalry being taken away is just. So many of these classic rivalries just going away. It sucks, right? Like Texas versus TCU going away. Texas versus Baylor. Baylor versus Texas A&M used to be a great rivalry, right? The Battle of the Brazos River, I believe it was called. Texas A&M Baylor gone, never longer being played. All these rivalries, regional rivalries being taken away from you. Rivalries that were fun. Rivalries that made sense geographically. Rivalries that were traditional. Yes, USC and Notre Dame are not, geographical rivals, but they're traditional rivalries, right? All of those being taken away now because of conference expansion and strength of record, and the casuals coming in saying, oh, your record says you are, so better not schedule that hard non-conference game and schedule your FCS and G5. Where's the fun in that? Like, there's no fun anymore. There's no rivalry, which is why, I get clowned on this a lot from people I know. Which is why every single time I start a new dynasty in College Bowl 25, I always make it apparent to rearrange the conferences in a way that really makes sense, right? So, putting, for example, like what I've done recently, adding in all of the Texas schools and all the Oklahoma schools back in the Big 12 and having those core rivalries being back, right? Like Baylor, Texas A&M, Texas versus Texas A&M, Texas versus TCU, Texas Tech versus Texas A&M, like all those regional rivalries, right? Keeping other rivalries intact. I do that because I like college football, and I just want what is best for college football, and I want, certain things to be still in place, right? Like these rivalries, and it sucks that because of, the UR record says UR crowd and the playoff expansion crowd and the conference realignment crowd coming in, that a lot of these core rivalries like Oregon State versus Oregon. Eventually, I think that's going to go away because I think they're still under contract to still play. Same with Washington State. But like Oklahoma State, Oklahoma should be playing. They should, like, those two schools should be doing what Oregon State are doing. They should be still playing each other. But because of politics and, real world, like, non-college ball stuff, they can't play that game anymore, which sucks. So, yeah, I'm not happy about this. I hope this is not going to happen. But unfortunately, because of the environment, the narrative, I guess that's out there right now, because of playoff expansion, conference realignment, this is one of the casualties of it. I think a lot of folks, when they signed up for, playoff expansion and moving these conferences around and subtracting teams and adding teams, a lot of people thought, oh, this would, it'll be a utopian society. And unfortunately, that's not the case. We are losing certain things, and college will make the sport great, like USC Notre Dame and Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma. Like, those things are just gone now, and they're going away. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but unfortunately it's going to happen. Let's more water here again to make sure the voice is fine. We'll do our team record projection for A&M. We'll move on to Q&A. Got two really big topics here. So to the two people who are watching, one of them is me. I don't know who the other one is. I don't know who that is, but some water real quick. Nothing's happening to the stream or anything, or if you're on Spotify, the audio's not going out. Just getting some water. Make sure the voice is parched enough to continue. All right. Team record projection 2025. We are doing this for most of the major FBS teams and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've done several teams already. We're on to Texas A&M. A&M last year, of course, Mike Elko's first year to go, 8-5, I believe. So it's the typical Texas A&M 8-5 record. It's their traditional, starting out strong, falling apart in November, even though it's a different coach now. I still have a lot of faith in Mike Elko and Texas A&M. They've done well in recruiting, done well in the portal. Last year was building block year. You have a lot of talent coming in, like I said, in the portal and whatnot. And, of course, you have Marcel Reed coming back, who people claim is a poor man's version of a lot of dual-threat people or dual-threat quarterbacks over the years, right? So, you have him coming back, a lot of talent that is still there, though most of it has moved on to the draft and whatnot in the portal. But you bring back most of your core staff, right? Your core coaching staff. Colin Klein's still back. Jay Bateman as your defensive coordinator is still there. Of course, Elko being a defensive coach. And, of course, one of the things we've heard towards the end of last year of A&M in particular was their defense failed them a lot last year, towards the end of the year. And I think Elko was very vocal about that. And, whenever you hear, sort of echoing Josh Pate here, but whenever you hear a very vocal, angry tone from a coach that is a defensive-minded, that probably translates to you're probably going to see a lot more improvement come year two. Again, for core staff being back, quarterbacks back, your schedule starts out pretty reasonable. So you have your two G5s, and then it gets real in a hurry. You get Notre Dame in South Bend on NBC. You get the primetime game. Auburn comes to town, Mississippi State, Florida, so you're at home a little bit. Then you go to, how about this? Fayetteville, Arkansas, no longer in Jerry. Well, that's right, guys. The A&M Arkansas rivalry is no longer in Dallas. Thank you. Finally, this game's on college campus for the first time in a record. I know they did it during 2020, but first time in 10 years, I believe, or so, 10 plus years, it's actually on a college campus. Thank you. So we'll be in Donald W. Reynolds Stadium, Razorback Stadium there in Fayetteville. Then you on the road to LSU, Missouri. So you have your, I think there's a bye week in between there, but three road games in a row on your schedule. South Carolina at home, then Stanford, then that Texas for your rivalry game. This again, much like last year, it's your same conference record, or your same conference schedule, but it's just the venues will change, and it really did change for Arkansas because it's finally a campus game. This is somewhat a manageable schedule. Again, your non-conference schedule, again, besides Notre Dame, is manageable. A conference schedule, luckily you get Florida at home early in the year. Mississippi State, same. Auburn, same. So based on your schedule, there are some tough games towards the end stretch there with LSU, Missouri, South Carolina, and then Texas. So there's 4 games there on your conference schedule that are tough. You also have Notre Dame. So you sort of do all that. Coaching staff mainly intact. Roster, again, you have new additions. Marcel Reed's back at quarterback. I think A&M, based on that schedule, what they have, they still have talent there. I still have a lot of faith in Mike Elko as a coach. I think the best case scenario, well, before you get into that, their over under win total, is 7.5. Again, we'll check a lot of these teams in the SEC because a lot of these teams have to play each other, and the conference is so big now. Is a 7.5, so that's over under win total from FanDuel. Again, they're not a sponsor of the show. We just use them for information purposes. Or some people believe the plural purposes perpi, which I don't really believe in that much, but whatever. Their best case scenario, at least according to me, after breaking down the schedule, and if you're doing it as an odds maker, who would you be favored against and who would you not? I think 10-2 is pretty reasonable here, based on how it sets up. Again, you look at the schedule again. So in this scenario, I guess I would assume you probably lose to Notre Dame, and then you, I guess, lose one of the 4 games there, I guess. Texas, LSU, Missouri, South Carolina. I guess you can choose one of them. Based on the roster and based on, again, I think Mike Elko, I think a lot of him as a defensive coordinator type of head coach. Now, he respects offense, but as a defensive mind, I respect him. This is a 10-2 type team. I may be high on them, but I think the best case scenario, they're a 10-2 team. Best case scenario, if everything goes smoothly, maybe they beat Notre Dame and maybe they split, LSU, Texas. There's a path there. Certainly a path there. The worst case scenario is actually 6-6. Now, a lot of this is sort of based on Marcel Reed. And look, I think he's a good quarterback. Hey, he's a dual threat guy. He doesn't like quarterbacks who run around. Though I will say, and this is a little bit, after, listening to guys like, Bud Elliott over on Cover 3, there's certainly some concern here because Marcel, yes, he's a good runner. He's not the best passer in the world. There's certainly some limitations there. So that's part of it. Injuries are part of it as well. Maybe the schedule, again, you have other games on there that are, kind of concern, right? Auburn, you get them early, so you're not necessarily quitting yet. It's still early in the year for them. Same thing with Missouri, I believe. Yeah, Florida, still early in the year. Same with Arkansas, it's on the road. 3 games on the road back-to-back is worrisome a little bit. So that's where the 6-6 scenario comes into play. If that were to happen, I wouldn't necessarily be worried about it because I still have a lot of faith in them. It's still a relatively tough schedule. But I'm actually going to go 9-3 is the most reasonable here. I think there is a path to where there's 3 games you can lose, but you can also win most of those games too. Again, if, injury stuff, Marcel Reed is the real deal. You can take a step forward with Colin Klein, who I also have a lot of faith in as an OC. I think A&M could be an 9-3 type of team. And I'm trying to remember, I was pretty close to A&M last year in terms of their final record. I don't know if I was exactly on point, but I was pretty close. So hopefully I'm on point here. So again, best case scenario, 10-2. Worst case, 6-6. Reasonable 9-3. Again, even if the 6-6 record, I'm not totally panicking on Mike Elko. Now, yes, will there be more added pressure on him? Of course, there will be. It's Texas A&M. But I'm not overly concerned, even at 6-6. And this is a fairly tough schedule. Of course, we'll see what happens in 2026 and going forward. But I feel pretty good about it for A&M this year. I think they're a really good team. I trust in Mike Elko and trust in that coaching staff there and how well they've kept things together there and done well in the portal. This could be a very much a surprise team in the SEC, or at least a team that people are not really thinking about because everyone's talking about LSU, Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, to a certain extent, Florida. Now I'm starting to see a lot of folks. I'm talking about Florida now. Missouri is another one that actually a lot of folks aren't really talking about, but A&M's in there too. A&M just casually just sitting there with all this talent still and doing well, still in recruiting and whatnot, and transfer portal. So A&M, feel pretty good about them. I don't know about all of our folks, but I feel good about them. One more water break here, and then we get 2 Q&A questions. One of them I am dying to talk about here. So let me first of all, get some water, and then we'll get set up here. Again, if you're just tuning in, again, welcome in. Again, make sure subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, follow me on Twitter. So let me get this quote here. Yeah, so this was some Q&A here. So to sort of tee this up a little bit, this question here is thoughts on Tony Gilroy and his recent comments. As you guys know, Andor wrapped up last week. Thankfully, I did not watch any second of the show on Disney Plus. I did watch some of the scenes of Krennic because that's a character that at least it's kind of cool enough to see that. But even though even some of his scenes are kind of boring too, he doesn't really do that much. It only shows up for like 3 episodes or whatever. It's kind of boring. But anyway, so Tony Gilroy ran his mouth yesterday. And I'm going to go through the full article because honestly, the article from Slash Film, I'm not being disrespectful or anything, but it was trash. It was a trash article. So Gilroy comes out, does an article for some reason, talking about the MCU for some reason because he's somehow an expert, because everyone seems to love Andor, which I don't. But the quote that's been going around, so this is coming from Cosmic Marvel on Twitter. So he's asked about, why is the MCU failing recently? He says, and this is his quote here, by the way, this is not 2 quotes here. So the first one is, what the fuck is the name of the box in the Avengers, the Tesseract? That's why all those movies, all those Marvel movies are all, that's why they fail, end quote. Second quote, you're just constantly, if that's all you're doing, then that's all you're doing is just trying to get a Tesseract. I'll be honest with you, if those are actual quotes too. That's like, I'll be honest, those are very weird quotes. And the article, again, like I said, it was kind of garbage because there's definitely a lot of pampering towards him. And look, I'm not trying to be mean to him either. I mean, look, he's not a friend of the program. And Norris, the person who wrote this article from Slash Film, look, this was a garbage article and this was a garbage take. Look, you can criticize Marvel for what they've done recently with, the way they've handled the multiverse stuff. It's not been going very well, and having to pivot to Doctor Doom and having to bring in some different things and, rushing, Avengers and X-Men, the OG X-Men from the first 3 Fox films, and them going against the MCU current Avengers and Thunderbolts and all this type of stuff, and the Marvel Fantastic Four, and, just how Marvel in the 2020s has not done well. There's a lot of ways you can point to, or there's a lot of things you can point to and saying they've failed at. Look, that's fair to criticize them for. I've criticized them on this show and privately. But the quotes from Tony Gilroy just saying that, it's, Marvel using the MacGuffin tactic and saying that this is how their movies are going to be. That's not a real criticism. That's not what's wrong of them. So I'm not really sure he got that from, unless he just doesn't care because he doesn't know what's really going on. Or he's just being a dick and just saying something to say stuff. Look, I have my own opinions on Tony Gilroy. We did that big story last week about, this N Division fighting at Lucasfilm, and, Dave Filoni's camp. They have, Kathleen Kennedy and Tony Gilroy's camp have sort of gone at each other. And, of course, Gilroy basically shut out Dave Filoni when he was doing Andor and said, basically, fuck you. And, of course, actually, I think this is something that, Josh over at Den of Nerds brought up during the stream. Apparently, Gilroy earlier this week, when those reports were coming out last week, try to sugarcoat it, saying, that's not real. That's just fans and, trolls doing stuff. Okay, so Joanna Robinson, who's a decorated journalist, has a book on Marvel Studios in the fall of them, I believe, or the rise and fall of Marvel Studios. Like, so you're saying that Joanna Robinson's some idiot? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure she's not a friend of the program or anything, but from what I've heard, she's not. So what? She's an idiot now, and she's a troll, and she's making stuff up. Let me tell you this: we don't make stuff up. We don't make crap up on this show. Everything that we say on this show is either my opinion or things we are hearing from other like shows or people on Twitter who are trusted people. Like, yeah, we don't make crap up here either. So, look, I have my own thoughts on Andor. I didn't like the show. Look, and I'll also say this as well, and this was something that Den of Nerds also said as well on his Twitter earlier, and I totally agree. Andor as a show, and I didn't really think about this, but it kind of makes sense given the reports we've had, with him and Filoni sort of going at each other and both of them, locking each other out. Again, Gilroy basically saying fuck you to him and, not letting him, give him notes on certain stuff and keeping, keeping things at least continuity-wise or keeping things connected to canon because his show takes place during Star Wars Rebels. So there's a lot of crossover there. If you've watched the show, if you know what happens, of course, like me, I just, watched some of the Easter egg breakdowns and stuff. There's very little connections to Rebels. It's almost like, essentially, Gilroy basically took a shit on it and said, whatever, I'm not connecting anything to my show, to your stupid show, which, look, as someone who hated Rebels to begin with, I've sort of grown up to it. It's fine. No, I don't necessarily think, shitting on it and having very little connection to it besides that one episode when, Mom Mothma, those are a big speech and there are some loose connections, but there's not really connections to it. I don't think that's really smart of him to do that. But what Dan Nerd said earlier, and I can put up his tweet. I think I have it somewhere. If I can find it, and I guess I may as well just talk about it if I can find it. But it was when he posted that earlier, that really struck a chord with me because I kind of feel the same way he did, and I can find it here. You can put it somewhere. Yeah, so this is his Twitter, and I'll just kind of read it verbatim. He said, I hope, this is him talking about the tweet about the comments that Tony Gilroy made. He said, I hope this makes people realize this is how he views fandom. This is coming from Josh, by the way, not me. So, quote, I hope this makes people realize that this is how he views fandom. Talking about Tony Gilroy, including Star Wars. I gave Andor a fair shot, and that's Josh, not me. But I felt like the show wanted me to feel guilty about for liking the old version of Star Wars. I think Tony finally said something so stupid that people will raise their eyebrows at it and ultimately at him, end quote. I totally agree with him. I think Andor is a show, and I didn't realize this until, or I didn't like put it together until Josh did earlier. Andor to me is a show that makes you feel guilty about liking, the original Star Wars trilogy, the prequel trilogy, Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, stuff like that. It makes you feel guilty for it. And I think he's right about that. It just the way he's, Gilroy's been going around it, and, the fact that there is that division between him and Filoni, and even if Filoni has a much higher power than he does, and, Gilroy's just one of the directors there, I think it's pretty clear that this show, what Andor is basically kind of a guilt trip for those who like traditional Star Wars. And look, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be more mature moments in Star Wars. And look, I will still defend Rogue One. It's still a good story, but it at least still respects George's legacy. In my opinion, just because I don't like Andor and all these comments and stuff and news and stuff about Gilroy, because again, Gilroy did come in and save that film. It was a disaster behind the scenes because I had to reshoot like 95% of the movie. I still like the movie. I don't dislike the movie because I dislike Andor. I still like the movie, but yeah, Josh is right here. I think this does, or at least Andor basically is a show that would make someone feel guilty about liking old versions of Star Wars, like at least the Star Wars content that goes in the realm of George's thinking, right? So think, the original movies, prequels, some of the TV shows animated and live action, at least under Filoni's watch and Favreau, even some of them have not been good, right? Your Kenobis of the world, your Boba Fett show. Well, yes or not, those shows, Mandalorian season 3, I wonder if there's been some, bumps in the road. At least they still respect George's legacy. They don't shit on it. They don't introduce sexual assault. They don't introduce, weird. At least they don't do, boring political. Want to fall asleep during half the episodes. Half the episodes are like Imperial officers just sitting around in a boardroom talking about crap I don't want to hear because it's boring. I want to hear, I want to see, stormtroopers fighting rebels. I want to see, Darth Vader fighting, killing rebel soldiers. I want to see, Jedi and Force stuff. Some of the stuff that Filoni's doing with the Mortis stuff. Like that stuff's more interesting than whatever the hell this is. Like seriously, like bringing in sexual assault to Star Wars. Come on, man. It is disappointing, but it's not shocking given who it's coming from. And it'd be interesting to see how this will continue and how you can already see the reactions going around. Even people who are staunch defenders of Andor, even they are going, who are both Star Wars and Marvel fans, are going, dude, this isn't the problem with Marvel right now. There's other issues. Yes, there's issues of Marvel, but what you're bringing up, unless you're just being a dick, like that's not the issues with Marvel right now. That's just clearly you don't care and you don't pay attention. So that's my thoughts on Tony Gilroy's comments. They're garbage, and the article too, by the way, from Slash, which is garbage too. It's literally just pampering to him and really may as well just been holding his hand during the whole interview, I guess. But anyway, whatever. Our last question here, and we'll get out of here. We're almost at an hour. What are your thoughts on how good Bryce Underwood could be this year? Of course, Bryce Underwood, the new quarterback in Michigan. I know this is something we haven't talked about, but of course there is that viral photo going around of Bryce Underwood. Looks like he had to gain some weight since he's joined Michigan back in the spring, which I didn't talk about a whole lot because it's like whatever. College kids aren't going to be drinking underage, eating good food or whatever and whatnot. Like when you first get there, you haven't done that before, and he's an athlete, you can shut it off and over the summer and whatnot. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think a lot of folks are, especially in East Lansing, Michigan, and Columbus, Ohio, are making a big deal about it. us in the media, like me, Cover 3, Josh Bader's a reason why we didn't talk about it because it's not relevant. Like, it's not that important. But what is important is how good he could be for this year. So Bryce Underwood comes in, a 5-star guy, was committed to LSU at one point, decommitted, and I'm sure you know the story by now and whatnot. And that whole situation, by the way, was the catalyst for LSU finally sort of caving into the NIL world and actually doing well in the portal, or at least getting good enough players now. I think Bryce could be pretty good this year. Now, granted, you go look at Michigan's schedule. It starts off pretty tough, right? Go to OU. It's freshman quarterback Brent Venables. That's not a good mixture, especially early in the year. If a guy, assuming Bryce Underwood's going to be the starter, I know they brought in who's the kid that DeBoer had at Fresno State, Hainer, I believe. Jake Hainer, I believe he's there. I think that's him. Let me see here, Jake Hainer. I believe that is him. See, he's still in college football. No, no, not him. Yeah, I thought didn't they bring in the Fresno guy from? Well, it's not Jake Hainer. He's in the NFL. That's wrong. Regardless, he brought in that transfer quarterback from Fresno, I believe, came in from. Let me just look this up. Research on the fly here on the Four Verticals podcast. Don't see anything on. But anyway, it's the assumption is it's going to be Bryce Underwood, regardless of whatever quarterbacks they have on the roster. He should be the starter. Yeah, it's not Jake. Why did I think of Jake Hainer? Yeah, he was there when Kellen DeBoer was head coach at Fresno. But anyway, he should probably be the starter. At least I'm assuming he'll be the starter. Of course, you have the OC there with Chip Lindsey. You have the new two co-OCs there. Of course, Sharon Moore is a offensive-minded coach. You go to Oklahoma, I don't care how good you are as a recruit. You're going against Brent Venables in that defense. That's going to be a struggle. I don't care. I would imagine Oklahoma's probably the favorite in that game. If I had to pick that game now, I'm probably picking Oklahoma to win, probably cover. But anyway, we can talk about that game in September. But yeah, I think besides that, early in the year, of course, Sharon Moore is going to be suspended, voluntarily suspended for the G5 game and the game against Nebraska. So yeah, at the beginning of the year, you'll see some struggles if Bryce is a starter. But I'm concerned though. Like, look, this year maybe sloppy, maybe may struggle a little bit. I'm not too concerned because I know I had Bryce Underwood for a number of years. Unless he doesn't leave, God forbid anything happens with the coaching change or with the NCAA stuff. If you have Bryce Underwood for a number of years, at least 3 years, I mean, given Bud Elliott's talked about before. I mean, I totally agree with him based on what I've seen of him watching. I didn't see him in person, but watching film of him and hearing what Bud Elliott had to say about him months ago, he is very much so in terms of size and skills and abilities. He has the potential to be similar to Cam Newton and players like him, Dak in college. Of course, he's not there yet, but he has the potential to get there. But yeah, I think Bryce could be pretty good this year. And again, I'm not expecting him to be, Trevor Lawrence 2018 or something like that, like a true freshman winning a national title. But there's a path for him to have a good year, not a great year, but a good year. I think the years after, sort of like Jane Rashada not Jane Rashada. He's I don't know where he is. He's at UTEP now. Wrong quarterback, DJ Lagway, sort of like him, right? Kind of that's what I'm expecting to happen with Michigan this year. Sort of not necessarily him, popping in and out of the lineup, but him, that type of performance, right? You see sparks of him. He has, maybe he has a couple of wild plays where he runs around, gets a first down, maybe trucks someone. Like, I'm not expecting him to, take over a season like Trevor did in 2018 after Kelly Bryant decided to quit in the middle of the year. I'm not fully expecting that to happen. I'm fully expecting this to be an up and down year for him. We've seen freshman quarterbacks struggle before. Bo Nix famously at Auburn struggled his freshman year, and then goes to Oregon and was in New York for the Heisman. So literally fulfilled the meme and almost won it. So yeah, I think Bryce will have a good enough year. Not a great year, but I think the years to come, like 2026, 2027, I would expect Bryce Underwood to be a very, very good quarterback and potentially be the best quarterback in the country. So yeah, there's certainly expectations for him. There's certainly going to be, aspirations and goals he'll have. And I'm not expecting Michigan to be a national championship contender this year, as I'm trying to say. The years to come, again, given what happens with this stupid NCAA investigation, what happens, because the eventual ruling will happen. It'll probably happen in a few months, but we'll see. But besides all that, I think it'd be pretty good in the next couple of years. And that's the show. So, yeah, we finished just at an hour. A couple of things here to note. I wanted to say this towards the end of the show. Congrats to Josh Pate. He's getting married today. Him and Savannah, his wife. I guess I don't know if their ceremonies right now or later, but she'll be his wife starting, I guess, this time tomorrow at whatever. But yeah, they'll be married, and congrats to Josh and her. I'm not necessarily a friend of him or a family friend or friend of his program, but I've never met him before in person. But I've been following his show for a number of years now. Before he moved over to 24/7, I was following him back when he was in Columbus, back in 2019. Interesting enough, and I was a fan of his back then, and still a fan today. And I've followed him for a long time, and as a veteran Page Stater, I can say that I've been following his show long enough to see him get married. So again, congrats to Josh and Savannah. Hopefully they have a great wedding today. Also, by the way, something a little bit interesting, not related to sports or anything, but do you guys know that at University of Maryland, their commencement speaker is Kermit the Frog? It's been something that was announced a while ago, but it's happening today, and there's supposed to be on live stream and whatnot. As someone who sort of grew up on watching Kermit, where it's in the various shows he was on, or on the Muppets or whatever, kind of cool. It's kind of interesting that they're actually having a actual puppet be the commencement speaker. So if you didn't know that, you know that now. Of course, you don't know the connection. Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, and he was the original puppeteer for Kermit. He graduated from Maryland. That's his alma mater. So, and that's why they have a statue of him on that at the school. So, yeah, Kermit doing a commencement speech here at about 3 hours or so. He'll be doing it. So it'll be live. I'll be watching it. Kind of curious to see how it looks. I believe this is a first to have a major university have a puppet doing your commencement speech. That didn't happen for me. I don't know if we had one at my alma mater. I don't think we had one for my commencement last year, but whatever. Regardless, that's something I wanted to point out because that's kind of cool. But yeah, again, congrats to Josh and Savannah. Hopefully it goes over pretty well today for your guys' wedding. But yes, I know it's Memorial Day this weekend, so have a great long weekend. No, it's unofficial start of summer, but technically summer starts, at least meteorologically, starts June 1st. But hey, unofficial start this summer. I know the weather's going to be great here in Jacksonville. It's going to be still kind of warm, even though it did cool off technically, but it's still going to be near, low 90s again. So not much relief, I guess. But hey, it's May in Florida, Memorial Day weekend in Florida. So until next Tuesday, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your 3 days off, and some of you may be starting early. Until then, again, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Take care, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.